crossed over, style took a major change, jumping from bleak to chic, a daring statement for the younger generation. As you can see, this is the typical wedding dress. It has long, flowing material that is thin and freeing. Another common trend was the coats that Jackie Kennedy wore. It was less flowing and was made out of thick material. Twiggy was a prominent model during these times. She crossed the fashion borders put up by society, defining and changing fashion of the 60s. Along with the miniskirt, another big hit was Burn the Bra. In the 60s, it was about breaking free from gender and social norms. What particular fashions do you think best reflect the style of the 1960s?
There's actually a lot of different fashions from the 60s. There's the mod or modernist fashions, there's the hippie movement, and then there were also more elegant fashions like Jackie Kennedy inspired.
Was the fabric a lot different in the 60s than it was in previous years? Or was there any change in fabric?
Polyester, for many, was a miracle. The birth of a fabric that you literally pop thing in the dryer and hang it up and you don't have to iron it, a miracle. My mother worshipped polyester.
So what connections do you see between like 1960s society and 1960s fashions?
Well, during the 1960s there was a lot of different movements going on. In the early 60s, during the mod era, the length of skirts got a lot shorter. The mini skirt was actually invented. The bikini became popular, and so the clothing got a little bit shorter during that time.
In my opinion, not the piece that came into the scene, but the piece that went away, and that was the bra. Underwear changed dramatically.
Women rebelled and they began to show a lot more skin. Skirt lengths got shorter, jeans got tighter, dresses began to have cutouts, and bikinis were invented so it would be easier to surf. But it quickly became a popular swimsuit style across the world. This rebellion was a part of the women's rights movement, and it expressed that women didn't have to dress a specific way in order to be appreciated.
Hippies tried to rebel against society's norms and fashion that was in a way. How do you think they did this? Through clothing and through their personal styles?
Well, again, we've talked about comfort and freedom, and the Burn the Bra was a protest following the Burn the Draft Card, which was a protest of the Vietnam War. And it was in light of a war going on that a lot of people didn't support, which the military uniform is very structured. You have free-flowing, you have men all of a sudden wearing bright colors and being the peacock again, and not just the gray and black suit.
As you can see, men's fashion in the 1950s was a lot more sophisticated and clean cut. Solid colors were used such as black, white, and gray. Whereas in the 1960s, men's fashion changed dramatically because it was no longer about a clean-cut look, but instead it became colorful and more casual.
When did style really begin changing in the 1960s?
You have several points of influence. You certainly have the end of the 50s, which was everything from the straight up and down skirt to the poodle skirt, again somewhat structured, into what we think of as the hippie movement, and then the influence of a first lady, Jackie Kennedy. Film certainly had an input with films that showed African Americans as more than just servants, and fantasies, musicals, Camelot, romance. Certainly the civil rights movement had great effects throughout society, and that affected fashion too. The black is beautiful. Those effects in fashion is, you know, this is probably more a hippie fashion, but we have bright colors now. In the 60s, if someone had an African American person had a very tight haircut in order to go to work, they might show up to a dance wearing an afro wig, and white people wore them as well. And they came in blonde and brown and in black. But I think the greatest influence on fashion was bright colors and wonderful ethnic patterns.
Do you know if there are any like real big key pieces of fashion from the 60s that are still popular today?
Oh yeah, there's what I love about today's fashion is that so much of it is inspired by the 60s.
Fashion today uses bright colors like the 60s did, as well as bold pattern prints. High brand names such as Versace and Gucci draw some of their inspirations from 1960s fashion.
How have the 1960s fashions influenced later decades? Like especially in like the 21st century trends?
Well, we see a lot of 1960s fashion today. The mod style has come back in. We see a lot of black and white color block designs, a lot of mini skirts. The bikini has remained a popular swimwear piece. And in addition to mod fashion, hippie fashion has also really influenced today's fashion. We see a lot of bohemian fashion today, a lot of fringe and florals, long flowy skirts, the pastel colors, tie-dye came back in style for a little while there. The long hair, we also see a lot of the headbands around the head and flower headpieces. So bohemian fashion is very much influenced by 60s.
How did the 60s style influence style in general?
I think again it was a matter of freedom. If you look at what people are wearing now, it truly isn't anything goes. And I think that began certainly in the 60s. It's been through several times through history, but the 60s is for our generation the beginning of it.
Where you been? Your mama's lit, she's all aglow.